Okay. The time for convening has arrived. We'll start this evening's series of meetings. We'll start with our work session. The first item is the Capital Sidewalk Program Scoring Criteria Update by Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, good evening. In preparation for, let's see if I can get this to advance. Thank you. In preparation for scoring those sidewalk project candidates that are in front of staff now and updating those scores before the end of the year, that staff set that goal. And why before the end of the year? Well, with the upcoming year, we intend to update the Transportation Master Plan. If you recollect, we funded a Transportation Master Plan in the budget for this year. Staff wanted to respond to an earlier council request that we review scoring criteria for the sidewalk program. And in particular, the request was made for a density factor to be considered as a part of the overall sidewalk scoring criteria. With that request, and in advance of the next scoring cycle we intend to go through, staff proposes that we add a 0 to 5 point scoring criterion for density as a part of the overall sidewalk criteria scoring. The proposed methodology for that, and sorry, this slide hasn't been updated since we reviewed, they have a proposed update that I'd like to share with you. Let me put it that way. And that proposed density criteria would be based on density as defined in our current city zoning map. In that case, you see a score of 0 there for conservation or parkway. Truly be a score of 1 for that. So an update there, please, with that. And then the next score up, a score of 2 in this case for RD12 through RD2, etc. Those would be the single-family residential areas. If you notice the associated key on the map, the majority of the city being single-family residential. 2 would be next, not 3, for those those zoning areas up to a 3-story limit. 4 for those up to a 4-story limit, and then 5 for all of those densities higher than that. The color coding on the associated map also relates to those scoring or zoning densities as related to the program. As proposed, the update to the scoring criteria for capital sidewalk projects would add this additional 5-point criterion into the already 55-point scale that we have with other factors considered. It would add 5 more points for an overall point of a 60-point scale when all considered, with density being one of those, now being one of the criteria, and an additional 5-point consideration. And you would see how, so there could be some potential shift within overall sidewalk project rankings as a result of density being added, but there are also other shifts and changes within the dynamic of how projects get scored as well. Particularly, I'd call your attention to gap closure, one of those. As new sidewalks are constructed throughout the city, gap closure for some areas can increase on the 5-point scale there as other works are completed, and thereby creating a more significant gap closure score there. Roadway construction classification, for instance, not likely to change, but constructability, gap closure, et cetera, those two are dynamic along the way. So Mayor and Council, with that, this would be the updated scoring criteria. Now a 60-point scale with density as a 5-point value directly related to city zoning map for density. Staff would reevaluate all of the candidate projects between now and the end of the calendar year in preparation for the Transportation Master Plan update. And then probably much like we did, no suggested schedule for that yet, in advance of T-SPLOS 2021, if we choose to seek another round of T-SPLOS 26 in this case, we'd probably make a final call for sidewalk inputs, sidewalk scoring updates before we enter into the T-SPLOS funding arena as well, so that we'd have a final list in preparation for a sidewalk program, again, potentially funded by T-SPLOS. With that, Mayor and Council, any questions?
Any questions? Dr. Kelly.
Great. Thank you for this presentation. I've been waiting quite a while for it. I was the council member that requested density be factored in, and it's simply because I noticed in my district there's just a couple of areas where you essentially have thousands of people, thousands of families living on streets that are a part of the sidewalk master plan, but that didn't seem to be a consideration. I do have a question about one of the criteria, that very top one, right-of-way availability. And it says that the public has the opportunity to increase this component. So the public can maybe influence that number if the right-of-way can be donated or an intent to.
And so to clarify, and we added that was I forget how many years ago we added that criteria. Mm-hmm. But it had to do with the willingness and acceptance of the project with the area where the sidewalk was being requested. In some cases, we had stepped off in the sidewalk projects, and then we received resistance from the neighborhood. Oh, no, we really don't want a sidewalk after all. And then the acquisition of right-of-way became, I'd say, a little less than contentious, but difficult in some cases, where we had to work with the neighborhood far more to find concessions and get the sidewalk built. So willingness to further right-of-way acquisition in the advance of a sidewalk project was seen as a significant score in implementation of a sidewalk.
Okay, so if members of the public wanted to demonstrate to you their interest.
For that criterion, mm-hmm. It would be the property owners.
It would be the property owners?
Yes, ma'am. So we're looking for the property owners to state their willingness to donate. And there's a sample form on the web page that talks to that, but that speaks to that. But we're looking to the property owners in this case to say, I'm on board, come knock on my door, we'll talk. We'll get you a sidewalk through here.
Okay. And is there a soft-ish deadline for that sort of activity?
Not so much now. When it will matter most is that second round of scoring I was discussing just a moment ago, just in advance of the implementation of a next T-SPLOS program, or if some other significant funding were perceived to be headed the way of a sidewalk program. For now, we're executing the program based on priority that we have funds available to execute. So the time it matters most is just in advance of receiving those funds so that we can finalize the projects in priority order that would be the recipients of those funds.
So to be clear, we're executing the $12 million worth of sidewalks that we put in the sidewalk capital plan, sort of?
I don't have the Tier 1 allocation in front of me right now, but it would be the side. Yes,
whatever
ma'am.
that number was, that's what we're executing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that's, okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Kelly, great question. I had a project up in District 1 where there was a sidewalk that was originally scored because there was one of the houses had a child that was in a wheelchair, and he was trying to get access to a shopping center. This is one over by Jet Ferry.
Yes.
And they went to each one of the homeowners and talked about getting right-of-way donated, and actually got the right-of-way donated and carved almost an alternative path that was originally envisioned to take advantage of the donated sidewalk, and that brought the score to the point where I think it made it to Tier 1. It's a Tier 1 project, I think.
We're executing that project. So,
yep.
Yes, sir.
But that
so
was
it's within
fundamental
the program.
to it. And then I guess my second comment is, if somebody has a sidewalk project they're interested in, tell them don't wait. Talk to the neighbors. Get the forms in. The sooner you get them in the Marty, the sooner they can get evaluated. you're going to be relooking at a bunch of these anyway because you're adding this density criteria. So
Right.
if you're
It'll be a
already looking
wholesale rescoring. So nothing's locked or grandfathered outside of those projects that are funded right now. So the entirety of the program will be reassessed with the new criteria applied.
Any others? All right. Mr. Martin, thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Are there any council discussion items that need to be brought before us? All right, hearing none, we'll close the work session.